Hey everyone, you're with Mind Body Solutions and the MBS crew. We've got Bethany and Amy, and we've got Jeffrey, Joe, and Jeff, and I'm Matthew. All right, so this video is about the sensation of expansion. Expansion is one of those things that in a yoga pose you don't really think about, but it's a crucial sensation. We tend to think about expansion as like the muscular actions and the effort. But in fact, it's such a pervasive sensation that you don't realize that gravity shifts change it, certain movements changing it. So your sensation of expansion in a yoga pose is constantly moving and changing. And that's part of why and how asana helps the brain rewire, is because the sensation of expansion and grounding are coming from different vectors and different angles. Now, for Mind Body Solutions, one of the key energies we're trying to help facilitate is a movement in the poses from inside to out. From the center of the spine outward. The sensation of expansion can be achieved effortlessly and with effort. So again, the sensation, just like the sensation of grounding, has many different faces. But the sensation of expansion is actually really important for people with disability. Now, people with disability, trauma, loss, and disability actually are a marginalized population, and in ways that are some intentional, mostly unintentional, have often and always historically been disempowered. And so the sensation of expansion, we're constantly not knowing exactly how to re-enter the world and fit in with others. So when a person living with trauma, loss, and disability can study the sensation of expansion in their own case from inside to out, it goes a long way to finding your voice within our culture. So like always with Mind Body Solutions, we're teaching yoga poses, but we're actually teaching way more than that. And this idea of moving from the center outward, that expansion doesn't always have to take effort, that there are many forms of expansion is part of the ways that yoga actually empowers people living with trauma, loss, and disability. The other thing about the sensation of expansion is that it is very grounding and also helps with stress and fatigue. So it's very erect. We've also done a lot of training for people in healthcare. And one of the things when someone's at the end of the day who is really tired and worn out, often getting bigger in space, expanding in space, is actually nourishing and helps with stress. And swinging back again to people with disability is that people with disability are often over time unintentionally living in smaller and smaller spaces. Their bodies don't work the way they want them to. So the sensation of expansion and living in more spaces, both in your body and out through into the world, is again a really important sensation. Now, there's one more part of this that's kind of, if you have expansion without grounding, it tends to be more like disassociation. So you don't want to just reach and expand and struggle or just kind of dissipate. Expansion is a sensation that needs to be grounded. Expansion is a sensation that won't happen very well if it's not balanced. And it also is a crucial part of what rhythm is, our four sensations. So again, the sensation of expansion is so basic in a yoga pose, and there are changes in base and gravity too. So I want all of us in the shot to take the arms wide. Now we're going to arms and legs wide, right? And so Jeff here is doing it on the floor. We keep a chair in front of Jeffrey so he stays balanced. We're all getting big in space, right? So one of the real tricks about teaching inner awareness is to cue people's joints from the ankles, the knees, the hips, the shoulders, the elbows, the wrists, and just get bigger in space. So now I'm going to have Amy and Bethany take their arms down and help with the sensation of expansion to make it more effortless. So they're going to hold up underneath the upper arm. Now this, taking some gravity out of the pose, taking some muscular action out of the pose actually allows for an effortless form of expansion. So now Jeffrey here can maybe feel from the center of his chest out through the center of the elbow, out through the center of his wrist. That expansion needs to be grounded by the sitting bones. So again, and you can watch when the support from gravity goes away, you'll see them like clench up a little bit and the world gets heavier again. So which one do you think they're going to smile with? Here comes the support again. Because there's an effortless form of presence in the body that we're not tapping into enough, especially when we live with trauma, loss, and disability. And so here, with just a little bit of support, taking a little bit of gravity out of the pose, the sensation of expansion is really more nourishing. And then, but here, Jeffrey's on the floor, right? This Jeff is on the floor. I want him to go out through his fingers, out through his inner heels, out through the top of his head. So I'm going to be cueing him in a whole bunch of different directions. And he's already supported. He has conditions of safety met, right? So he has some trouble with balance when he's standing up. And so this is where the conditions of safety are met by the grounding. And he gets to practice a different form of expansion. Again, arms and legs wide while lying on the ground is also a really good way to go. So now we want to move to a different version of expansion, one that's on the ground, but this one really highlights how important your spine is to the sensation of expansion. Remember, yoga poses function from the center spine outward in most cases, and so supporting the spine and giving reference on the spine actually truly helps the sensation of expansion. And I really welcome you to try this at home with a friend or a family member. So what Amy's going to actually, and she's going to talk you through what she's going to do here.
So once again, I'm lining myself up, my spine in line with Jeff's spine. And notice that he's on a couple of blankets here, and I've also put myself on the same number of blankets, so we're both sitting on height. We've also given Jeff a little bit of support underneath his legs to help him be a little more comfortable. So once I've lined myself up here, just going to take my foot, and notice that my heel is resting on this blanket behind him. Just putting my foot right into the sacrum, that bone right at the base of the spine, that triangular shaped bone, bringing the heel in and just moving forward with my foot.
If you didn't see, just took a big exhale because this feels good.
And then I'm going to just allow my foot to come out and notice how Jeff sinks back into gravity there. And we'll move it again.
This will be shown in other videos too, but he's getting centered on his sitting bones. So the sensation of balance on the sitting bones is actually really important for the spine to release energy through his limbs, right? And then move away again, and you'll watch gravity drop him back in again. So what happens here is the sensation, the foot goes into the sacrum. This is a truth that the sacrum reflects the sternum, right, in yoga poses. But he's getting both a lift up his chest and a release of energy out through his legs. And this is happening just by changing the center of gravity on his sitting bones. And the expansion floods the whole body. So here comes the other foot up between the shoulder blades. And this will be like a Calgon bath, because then instead of falling out backwards behind him, he gets supported all levels, and the effortless part of the energy of his spine now is invited through the entire body. This is a really good time to breathe, because he's got an effortless effort happening in his body. And then watch as Amy goes away with the upper, you'll see him fall back a little bit. He's off balance, he's off again. She's going to go from the bottom one, and suddenly this is the world that Jeff has to live in every day with his disability. He doesn't get the conditions of this level of expansion. So you can see his neck has to strain more, and his sitting is not nearly with as much ease. So again, there's an effortless form of expansion that fills the vessel of the body from inside to out, and it typically travels from the spine out to the limbs.
Also notice that Jeff is a little bit off balance when I was doing this. So if you've got a student who has difficulty with trunk control, you could even come in with the base of your base of your thigh here. So my knee is right there. I'm just bringing it, doing the same thing I did with my foot, and then also supporting the back body. Then I have just a little reference on his shoulders. So we're getting that effect while also making sure that conditions of safety are met.
So not only is this a happy mind-body sensation, it's hopeful. And this is the part of the subtle benefit of yoga poses for people living with trauma, loss, and disability. All right, now we're going to explore the sensation of expansion in a classic pose, triangle pose, and we're going to show different versions of it. We're going to start off first with Amy doing what is a, quote, traditional triangle pose or Trikonasana. Now, you can already see, to take your arms length wide for a second. So here's where we just were. Right now she's going to turn one foot in, one foot out. And then she's going to come down and come into the pose. She's going to use the block for grounding, right? It's called triangle pose. You can obviously see why. But there's a whole bunch of different expansions here. One is if she rolls her belly towards the floor, as she turns it up, there's an expansion. That just went through the whole thing. Obviously the fingertips, obviously the back heel, obviously the front foot. There's a whole bunch of effort and muscular action that's going on in the legs. This pose is expanding in multiple directions at once into the empty space in the room. And then she's going to come up, turn your feet straight ahead, come back together. Now we're going to show it in various people here, different positions of it. So first, we're going to have it go with Kim. So Kim is sitting here and in alignment. Now, I could worry about her leg positions if I want. I'm going to take your legs a little bit wide, but I don't really care as much as long as she's staying grounded. I want her to feel balanced and safe. Now, I'm going to want her to take one hand over here. And then so she's, again, grounding here. I want her to set. I want her to take time. I want her to feel what's happening, right? And then she's going to take the other arm up. And so this is the outline. It was, Amy, will you come around? And she's going to put, press into her back knee, right, to create a sensation of grounding from the front, right? So a sensation of extra grounding here allows her to feel effortless. If I want her to get the subtle part of grounding, I'm just going to support her a little bit on the upper arm. So now she gets a sensation of ease in her pose, and maybe breathing gets easier. So now we're going to show her what happens when she doesn't have the grounding, right? And then take your arm down, Kim. And just take a break here. Bring your legs together for a second. We're going to do it again, and you're going to push on your own back thigh. So now, so take your legs wide a little bit again. And you're going to come over. Again, same, come over. Now, before you take the arm up, push back on your own back femur bone, your back leg. So push down there. Rise your chest, so grounding to expansion, broaden your palm, right? Now, from this sensation of grounding, release the back hip, take your arm up in the air. But memory helps her keep the grounding imprinted. And again, Amy's just going to lightly help her upper arm for a second, so she gets to experience it from a sensation of ease. Now the expansion changes again from inside to out. So you're constantly trying to reveal that the poses are moving from inside to out, and then release and come on down. So now we're going to go over to Joe here. In this, why don't you come around, Amy? So now he's going to try to do it, and we're going to support him. But first we want him to do it with his own effort, right? So he's going to lean over under his armrest. He knows to shift his position, keeping his feet grounded. We wouldn't want his feet hanging in the air, right? So he's leaning over, getting himself positioned, finding his own grounding, and starting to do the pose. So now here you can see Amy's going to help this arm with gravity. He's got the belt to hit into, even though he can't move. And I'm just going to push here so he gets some relief. I got to lock my brakes, right? Push in on his knees so he gets the sensation of grounding. Opening his chest, he's expanding, including out the top of your head, Joe. Right? Yeah, from the sitting bones out to the top of your head. Pick a point from the center of your chest and go out through each shoulder. Feel your sitting bones. Good. And then slowly release. So now we're going to do it with Jeffrey here on the ground. So we got him up on lifts because he's got some tight hamstrings. So take your legs apart. So he might need a block. You got a block for him, right? So now, in a way, he's got his arms and legs wide, right? And so now just for a second, I want him to just take his arms wide. They can see where, where his balance issue is. I'm just going to give him a little bit of break here for a second by taking some gravity out of the pose. So he gets to find where his legs are. When you kick gravity out of the pose, you can find the subtle part of your mind-body relationship. Then, Jeff, you're going to lean over to the side, right? Now, don't worry about taking this arm up yet. Just put your hand on your back hip for a second. Here, I want him to get the grounding sensations on his own, right? So he's over. Put your hand on your thigh for now. So he's open and he's stretching out through each leg, expanding out through each leg. Amy's just going to touch him between his shoulder blades here. Hand in the back of the sternum. He gets a sensation of expansion from the center of his chest out, right? So now, keep feeling the pressure on, so take your hand away, Amy. So now lift your hand up and go into the full pose. So take your arm up, right? So he's up like this. And so again, if I don't have him in gravity, his inner body collapses, right? So I'm going to do this and help him. Now Amy's going to put her hand right between his shoulder blades again. And this is just window dressing or ice cream on the cake. Ice cream on the cake, yes. Right? So he gets to feel the expansion. Good. And then slowly release and come back together. So in this video, you would do both sides, but we're trying to value your time watching a long video. Again, I want to just back up and talk about the sensation of expansion. Right? It's such an integration. In order to have expansion, the other thing I haven't talked about is that you need a sensation of boundary. So Jeff, will you just do the pose one more time over to the side? So the sensation of boundary is actually crucial to the sensation. So when I grab him here, I give him a boundary. He gets a reference, right? When he puts his hand on his own thigh, right, he gets a boundary. Paradoxically, you can't truly expand from inside to out without boundary. So instead of your body seeming like a limit, its boundary that it gives to your spine is critical to the sensation of expansion. These sensations and the depth of them are incredibly deep. They take practice. They take observing. This type of practicing of the core sensations will and does take a lifetime. So I couldn't help it. We felt like bad yoga teachers. We needed them to go the other direction too. But no, the sensation of grounding and expansion are going to be crucial to balance and rhythm. Watch for those in future videos.